Mr. Chancellor, Mr. President, graduating students, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present Dr. Tom Feasby. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce my close friend, Tom. Dr. Feasby is one of Canada's most notable neurologists, scientific directors, and administrators of academic medicine. He has made outstanding contributions to medical research and the development of medical programs at Western, the University of Calgary, and the University of Alberta. Of equal importance are his seminal contributions to shaping and optimizing healthcare delivery and healthcare policy in Canada, a subject of great current interest. His career is a real testament to scientific excellence, great integrity, inspired leadership, enthusiastic personal commitment, and compassionate care. Dr. Feasby obtained his medical degree from the University of Manitoba in 1969. Fortunately for Western and for me and my family, Tom and Isabel came to London for his neurology residency under the renowned Henry Barnett. After 2 years' research at the Sobel Department of Physiology in London, England, he returned to Western as assistant professor in the Department of Clinical Neurosciences. He rose through the ranks to full professor and was chief of the Department of Neurological Sciences at Victoria Hospital. He then moved to the University of Calgary in 1991 as professor and chairman of the Department of Clinical Neurological Sciences. Dr. Feasby built one of Canada's leading neuroscience departments, which now includes internationally prominent research programs in stroke, multiple sclerosis, brain tumors, and peripheral nerve research. He was vice chairman. He then went to Edmonton, where he was vice chairman of academic affairs at Capital Health and associate dean of clinical affairs at the University of Alberta, where he founded iCare, a unique Canadian health services institute. He then became Dean of Medicine at the University of Calgary about 6 or 7 years ago, where he founded the Calgary Neuromuscular and ALS clinics. He served for several years on the board of directors of both the Canadian and American Neurological Associations and currently serves on the boards of the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research, the Institute for Public Health, and the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada. Despite a very busy clinical and administrative career, Dr. Feasby has authored or co-authored more than 150 refereed publications. Just to mention two highlights, he and his colleagues were the first to describe a form of Guillain-Barré syndrome, a devastating neuromuscular disease, in several highly cited papers. More recently, he has concentrated his research on the quality, appropriateness, and overuse of medical treatments. One important paper uses statistical algorithms to implement better the International Classification of Disease, or ICD, and others document the overuse of techniques such as MRI, which is very well known, of course. Dr. Feasby has always shown a tremendous enthusiasm, intensity, and passion for a wide range of other activities, sports of many kinds, such as running, football, tennis, basketball, and even competitive bird watching at Point Pelee. Because every activity has to be done at a highly competitive level, usually with a lot of humor, he is still smarting from not seeing the elusive Connecticut warbler that I saw, or should I say, thought I saw, under a very large pine tree about 30 years ago. Despite his hectic schedule, Tom has been able to maintain, partly with these additional activities, he has been able to maintain a balanced life with much compassion and love for his wife of 45 years, Isabel. There are 3 children, Colin, Jonathan, Charlotte, and I'm very pleased to see his mother and sister here today as well. And of course, he's got a wide range of friends here today as well. Mr. Chancellor, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and in the name of the Senate, I ask you to confirm the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa, upon Tom Feasby, medical doctor, teacher, administrator, and inspirational person.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as Chancellor, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa. Congratulations, Dr. Feasby. Right. On behalf of all assembled here today, I should now like to invite our newest alumnus, Dr. Thomas Feasby, to address Convocation. Dr. Feasby.
Mr. Chancellor, Mr. President, faculty members, and especially graduates and your families and friends, I am honored to stand before you today to receive this degree. Let me first, at this point, thank Mike Bancroft for his kind remarks. Too kind. I have a long connection with Western going back to the 1940s, when my grandmother, Mary Erskine, served as the assistant to Western's President Sherwood Fox. My uncle and aunt both graduated from Western, and more recently my sister graduated in physiotherapy. Our son Colin received a master's in history, and our niece trained here in pediatrics. My father, Will Feasby, was head of pediatric dentistry in the dental faculty for many years and was a loyal supporter of Western. I came to Western in 1970 to train in neurology in the new Department of Clinical Neurological Sciences created by Henry Barnett and Charlie Drake, two giants in the world of neurology and neurosurgery. Exciting things were happening at Western in the Faculty of Medicine. I well remember the day in 1973 when the University Hospital opened with a symposium right here in Alumni Hall, highlighted by speeches from communication guru Marshall McLuhan, neuroscientist Fred Plum, and the eminent neurosurgeon Wilder Penfield. Premier Bill Davis landed by helicopter on the pad in front of University Hospital. Outstanding students and faculty were attracted to Western. From the group I was associated with came several department heads and three deans of medicine, including your current dean, Dr. Strong, as well as the president of a major Canadian university and the CEO of one of the world's leading healthcare organizations. I learned the value of role modeling, setting one's sights high, and surrounding oneself with outstanding people. It's nostalgic for me being back in Alumni Hall, where I attended many Mustangs basketball games, played a little pickup basketball myself, and was once here on the podium, on the platform, as the honorary president of the medical class of 1984. I rejoiced, as many of you did, when I learned last month that Alice Munro had won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Western is justly proud of this fine graduate. For years, I have taken vicarious pleasure from knowing that the first house we bought in London on St. George Street was the one she lived in just a year earlier as writer-in-residence at Western. I encourage all of our graduates today to read some of what Alice Munro wrote and to realize that all of you have unlimited potential to do great things too. Your graduation signifies a major accomplishment, but more importantly, it's a turning point in your life where your career really begins. When I graduated from the University of Manitoba 44 years ago, the convocation speaker that day was Carlton Williams, the president of Western. And he said to us, This is the first day of the rest of your lives. This expression may seem somewhat trite today, but it resonated with me so that I still remember it these many years later. So what guidance can I give you in a few minutes to help with the rest of your lives? The world when I graduated was a very different place. Geopolitics were dominated by the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the West, and the Vietnam War was raging full force. The White House apparently had a red phone for the president to call the Kremlin, potentially to defuse any rising crisis that might lead to nuclear war. These were things we worried about. Canada was much smaller and more insular then, as we had yet to see the wave of immigration that has transformed us into a truly multicultural society. Most Canadians, including students, had not traveled abroad, except perhaps to an American border city. And technology seemed primitive by today's standards. It's true that the United States had put men on the moon, but back then, instead of BlackBerries, we used black rotary dial telephones. We had yet to see the first CT scanner. Computers still filled large rooms requiring air conditioning and had less power than your smartphone. No one had dreamt of the internet, let alone electronic social networking. Despite the troubles the world faced, my classmates and I set out optimistic and determined to make our way. We all faced some obstacles, but we have had a tremendous run. Our generation sequenced the human genome, found the cure for many cancers that were previously untreatable. We can now travel to almost any place in the world in a day. We can connect with people anywhere with a few keystrokes on our cell phones. It's been a wonderful time. It's said that information and technology double every 1 to 2 decades, so you have much more of this in store. We just don't know yet what the innovations will be or where they will take you, but I know you're in for an exciting ride. On the other hand, there are daunting problems facing humanity, and many predictions for our future are pessimistic. What will be our fate with global warming? Will terrorism make our world unsafe? How about depletion of our resources and extinction of species? Will pandemics of influenza devastate our population as happened in 1918? Will we develop effective ways to fight the growing number of antibiotic-resistant infections? And above all, will we find a way to feed the rising global population and prevent worldwide famine? Needless to say, I can't answer all these difficult questions. That will be your challenge. But I'd like to make a few comments and then deal with the last question in more detail. Many sources have shaped my thinking on these matters, but foremost amongst them has been a book by Matt Ridley called The Rational Optimist, which I recommend to you. Like him, I have a very optimistic view of your future, in spite of the challenges I mentioned, and I believe you will play an important role in making it so. One thing I've noticed is that bad news seems to play better than good news. However unfounded they may ultimately prove to be, predictions of doom and gloom often attract more notice than the incremental progress that drives the sciences or the small victories that add up over time to advance law, politics, and the social sciences. So despite what you have heard, remember that cancer rates are not increasing. And no, we're not running out of energy supplies. Crime rates are not rising. They are declining in most major urban centers. And the world economy did not end with the 2008 financial crash and is now recovering. It's been said that pessimists are never disappointed, but perhaps in these cases they were. But let me talk about the predictions of global famine. In 1798, in his famous essay on population, Thomas Malthus predicted that because the productivity of land is finite, rapid population growth would soon outstrip the food supply and lead to widespread famine and social collapse. One example may help us to understand why that dire prophecy, like many others, has not come to pass. An American agronomist named Norman Borlaug started working in Mexico in 1944, trying to improve the yield of wheat, the principal crop. By multiple crossbreeding, He succeeded with a high-yield, disease-resistant dwarf variety. However, the real resistance problem came from the Mexican farmers who feared introducing a foreign product. It took Borlaug years of effort to overcome their resistance, but by 1963, 95% of Mexican wheat was his dwarf variety. The productivity had increased 600% from 20 years earlier. Malthus' 1978 prediction of food crisis seemed to be impending in India and Pakistan in the 1960s, with widespread starvation barely staved off by massive American food aid. Borlaug tried to introduce his hybrid dwarf wheat there in 1962, but he was thwarted again by the resistance of the bureaucracy and cultural opposition to new ideas. It was only when the famine reached crisis proportions that his wheat was accepted in 1965. Within 3 years, the wheat production in both India and Pakistan had more than doubled, and the new problem they had was how to store the surplus. This is why Norman Borlaug won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970. This revolution has continued. More than 3 times as much grain per acre is now produced in the world compared to 30 years ago. Worldwide birth rates are dropping, and it's predicted that we will produce more than enough food to feed the world populace at its predicted peak in 2075 and beyond. Indeed, there is reason for optimism. I had the privilege of meeting and hearing Bill Clinton speak a few weeks ago about his work in Africa with the Clinton Foundation. One of the key points he made was that we now live in a truly interdependent world, and we will move more in that direction. We cannot isolate ourselves. Divorce is not an option. Edward O. Wilson, the Harvard sociobiologist, has explored the biological basis of this interdependence in his recent book, The Social Conquest of Earth. He argued that the social forces of evolutionary selection have shaped our species, Homo sapiens, to operate most successfully when we're in cooperating groups who are interdependent. This is in contrast to the evolutionary pressures on individuals promoting selfishness. As Wilson says, a selfish individual may be more successful than the altruistic one, but the altruistic groups will beat the selfish groups. We are mostly programmed by social evolution to be altruistic group members, independent and mutually supportive. Loosely translated, this means united we stand, divided we fall. Canada is like that, a successful, altruistic, multicultural society, a model of interdependence for the world. I believe that you now have a great opportunity as new graduates of this fine Canadian university. You have the chance to develop your careers to spread this message around the world. You can build a future of shared opportunity, prosperity, community, and responsibility. And you can tackle the world's great challenges with a sense of optimism. There are future Norman Borlaugs amongst you, and I am confident that you will help find solutions to the world's most pressing problems. Thank you and good luck.